talking from the podium?
Yes.
Okay, I might come around.
Okay.
It's just so I don't heckle you from behind, you know?
Sounds good.
Good afternoon, all. Getting started a little late. However, let's call the meeting to order at 4:09 or 8. Today, August 20th, 2025. What we do basically we have the ability to get Gregory Leclerc here today to talk with. He's a municipal planning biologist beginning with Habitat Program, and we have him to talk about freshwater and scrub wetlands here in Harpswell to get a sense of how we can start thinking about those wetlands and the relationship to our community more than just relationship at the coastal wetlands have. So I'm going to introduce Greg at this point, and let him take over the program. And afterwards, then we'll just do a quick run over of the minutes and so forth at the end. Greg.
Great, thank you. Oh, this is so cool to hear myself so well. Every presentation that I give in a town hall, it's usually we have to pull down a curtain and find an old projector and put it on the curtain screen. So you guys are high tech.
We are high tech. How about that?
That's Harpswell.
Yeah.
Don't laugh, you guys.
And incidentally, I grew up near Harpswell. I grew up in Topsom, so it's cool to be back down this way. I love this
Nice.
area, so thanks for giving an opportunity to come back down here. So if we could just do some quick introductions, a little bit about myself. As you heard, I'm the municipal planning biologist in the Beginning with Habitat program at the Maine Department of Inland Fisheries and Wildlife. It's the longest title in the world, I'm pretty sure. But I work with a variety of communities, and I work in a variety of environments with a variety of wildlife, just about anything out there that you can think of. So I love sharing this photo. It's one of my proudest moments of finding an almost state record snapping turtle out in Fairfield. That's a 55-pound turtle, pretty large guy that was buried in the mud. I had no idea how big that turtle was going to be until we started pulling it out and collecting data on it. But if we could just go around the room real quick, I'd love to hear everybody's names and what your roles are. And if your role is just Conservation Commission, I'd love to also know what else you do, because everyone here comes with a different background. So if you don't mind starting, that'd be great.
Turn on your microphone, Ann.
Ann Caldwell, I'm on the Conservation Commission, obviously. We're a very recent resident here in Harpswell, but it fulfills many of our greatest wishes in terms of a community. And I have many years of experience in prior places in volunteering in local government, particularly with regard to planning issues and conservation, land conservation issues.
Excellent.
I'm Deirdre Strachan. I'm obviously on the Conservation Commission, and we also have a Resiliency and Sustainability Committee, which I'm on, and I do a lot of grant writing, including one right now.
Oh, I could use you for some of my work then.
Not today.
I'm Nancy West. I'm obviously on this, and I'm also on the Resiliency and Sustainability Committee with Deirdre. My background is in geology. I admit I haven't had biology since 10th grade, but I've had a lot of chemistry and physics and geology. My career was in education, secondary education, some community college. Been here for 10 years in Harpswell, and this is home. This definitely feels like home.
Excellent.
The sense of community here is profound, and I think that's why so many of us volunteer in so many different organizations.
And geology and chemistry, I bet you know more about biology than you're letting on to. That is the
so.
basis. for
Probably
biology.
so, but I have never made a chocolate chip cookie to replicate the organelles in a cell.
Well, it's never too late.
I'm Wendy Batson. I too am on the Conservation Commission. I also serve on the Land Trust Board and chair their program committee. And I'm a retired international humanitarian worker in ex-war zones.
Pick your brain about that.
Okay, I don't have that kind of credentials. I'm sorry, Wendy. I'm Mary Ann Nave. I'm Chair of the Conservation Commission and the Resiliency and Sustainability Committee. Lived in Harpswell for about 25 years, and as Nancy said, after living in other places, I really feel like this is at home. My interest is in
Solving the world's problems.
well, yeah, I keep trying to do that and nothing happens. But anyhow, always being interested in the environment, and when I came up here, I had the opportunity to really focus in and learn a lot about it and do something with it.
Excellent.
Hi, Greg. I'm Abby on the Conservation Commission. Been on this commission for about a year. I've been in Harpswell for approximately 2 years. I'm a social scientist by training and work at Island Institute. I lead our climate planning and adaptation work. So I spend a lot of time thinking about coastal, rural communities and island communities, needs they have related to flooding. And I know who you are. I saw your name. You founded the Maine Big Night. So cool. I love Big Night. I went out this year.
Oh,
and
good.
We have a little pool in our backyard, and it was so fun. I spent like an hour out there just like listening, and it was just crazy.
Excellent. Oh, that makes me so happy to hear. And thanks for bringing your perspective to this work as well. We need more social work folks in this field, I think.
I don't know if it'll reach.
If you come close, I'm not scared
Okay.
of you.
Yeah, Greg, I'm Tony Barrett. I also live in Harpswell and as a member here. I'm a trails advocate, and I just recently became certified as a chestnut chaser by the American Chestnut Foundation.
Oh, neat. Cool. Did you work with Tom Clack at all, or?
You know, I've met him at meetings, but I haven't worked with him as part of my certification.
Gotcha.
But I've gone out and looked at trees.
Oh, chestnuts are,
Not with Tom.
the chestnut stuff is just like some of the coolest work I have
Well, we
heard
got,
of.
you know, the little farm over here in Pittsburgh where we have a lot of them where we're doing tests.
Wow. Is it like the experimental plots of like the inoculating them with the disease and that whole 9 yards? Wow.
I've done the inoculation, which is you go out to purposely kill trees.
It's evolution at work.
Tim with codes. I have nothing as substantial as these other people. Just no.
I'm Tony with codes. Tim and Tony with codes. Yeah,
She has to give up her good seat.
I know, it's my favorite seat. I'm Margaret McIntyre, the Harpswell town planner, and I have lived in Harpswell for most of my life, but I grew up here. Yeah, yeah.
Awesome.
Miriam, before we get started, do you want the slides? The slides are not on the recording. You want to, you know what I'm saying? Really fast.
Oh, yes.
I didn't know if that was a problem we could fix now, or if you wanted to insert them later.
Well, while they do that, thank you everybody for introducing yourselves. I always love learning the like different odds and ends of folks who end up in this sort of work. Anybody see any cool animals lately?
About 3 weeks ago, we saw a mink cross the road on the Dingley Island Bridge, or just next to the Dingley Island Bridge, and our dog is very interested in the smells of the rocks where the mink was crossing the road.
Sometimes you can smell them. Has anyone here ever smelled like weasel before? If they've been like defecating and urinating on the rocks, you can actually like smell that kind of like musty stink. And now I can differentiate between like weasel and fox. Like sometimes walking through the woods, I'm like, fox peed here some point recently. It's pretty strong.
Yeah, I had a weasel. I thought it was a weasel. Maybe it was a mink. Walk across my driveway in daylight,
Mm-hmm.
and I thought it was going to come up and run up one leg down the other, but it was pretty bold.
Weasels are some of our best predators. They're very successful.
We have a bunch of badgers that like to come and eat our garden.
Really?
Yeah, and they climb under the fence, and they're really good at eating the tomatoes and
Do you mean like groundhogs?
groundhog.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're pretty good at taking out some people's gardens. They haven't touched mine this year. I've been pretty lucky.
We have a critter
What you got?
which is very neat. We don't have a fence around the tomatoes, but even partly ripe tomato instantly disappears. No tracks, no mess, no destruction of the plants, very neat and tidy. And no debris left of any sort of the tomato. It just picks them and goes away with them. And we just bought a game camera to figure out who is possibly doing this.
I'd be very interested to learn what that would be.
I hope it's not one of your neighbors.
I think it's a raccoon, actually, but
Could very well be.
So I would like to pick your brain about a creature that we have seen evidence of but don't know what it is. I was walking our dog halfway out our driveway, and there was a half of a crust of bread below a big white pine tree. It was not our bread. We don't throw bread out for creatures. There seemed to be a dug-up area, maybe 2 inches deep and maybe 8 inches around near the base of the tree. But it was lying there uneaten until our dog caught to it. And we have no idea how that crust of bread got halfway out the driveway, and we're in a very rural area.
Yeah.
So do you have suggestions? Could it have been a crow, for instance?
I mean, the crow is
Snag
what
it?
first came to mind, but then if it's at all related to the dugout area, it could be skunk, it could be fisher, sometimes they cache food, raccoons.
Okay, this wasn't wet or anything. It looked like it was a fairly recently acquired piece of bread.
Huh.
It was like, so why wasn't it eaten? Or maybe half of it was eaten and the rest was left.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like crow to me, just they don't always finish their food, they might fly off with it, they might pick it from somebody else's place, and was it beneath a pine tree by
It was
chance, or?
very close to the trunk of a pine tree that's probably this big in diameter.
Could have been a raven.
Okay.
They're pretty,
So you're thinking bird.
I would guess so, but yeah.
It was weird.
Yeah.
And the evidence is now gone.
Yeah, and your dog.
The dog found it, yeah.
And my son, every night going from our house to the guest house, has encountered 2 porcupines. And they both just sit down and go, "So, what's your next move?" My son goes,
Theirs,
"Well,
not yours.
a big detour."
Yeah.
Totally unintimidated.
Yeah.
I think we're set to go.
Okay, good. All right, well, thank you everyone for holding with us and going through all of that. I want to give a quick overview of the Beginning with Habitat program. Just, I assume we're all familiar with it to some degree. I'm not here by accident, but we offer a lot of services that folks are not necessarily aware of, and we've recently added some more. So I just want to make sure that you guys are aware of what we can do to help you out in case you have any needs. So some background, the Beginning with Habitat program is this voluntary landscape scale approach to conserving native species and landscapes. And I really want to place extra emphasis on the voluntary aspect of this. Because of course, IF&W, we provide a lot of influence to like permits and regulations and environmental review, but we're not on that side of IF&W. We're on the side where we're ahead of that. We're like helping you strategize, giving you ideas and information. So everything that I'm going to share with you today or in future interactions, they're not requirements, they're recommendations, unless I'm explicitly talking about laws, which I'll talk about some wetland laws today. So of course we cover species and their habitats, but IF&W is also heavily integrated with some recreational concerns, so hunting, fishing, ATVs, boats. So we cover some activities related to recreational access as well. And just to give you an idea too of what Beginning with Habitat is made up of, we're this conglomerate of other agencies. So even though IF&W is where we're housed, we are this group that is actually formed of all of those organizations at the bottom of the screen there and then some. So we bring together a tremendous variety of data and strategies and professional expertise to try to bring information to folks like yourselves, since you're actually at the front line of conservation work. So we provide anything from like standard information, just like handouts about certain species and habitats, to spatial data, which is our most popular form of service. I imagine at least some of you have seen our Beginning with Habitat maps before, and we recently updated our maps so that our symbology is a little bit clearer. I'll talk about our maps here in a second, but we also provide technical assistance. So if you're working on language related to a town ordinance or an open space plan or a comprehensive plan, these are all things that I help with. I also do site reviews as well. So if you just recently acquired some new municipal property, I'm more than happy to walk that with you and help document what sort of features might be on that property. That's also my favorite thing to do because it gets me out of the office and gets me out into the field, which is not something I get to do a whole lot with this job. And of course, we provide this sort of service to municipalities, but also private landowners. We have a private landowner team, so if you have any private landowners of particular interest that you need to work with, we have 2 private landowner biologists. We also have 2 climate and resilience related biologists as well. We just hired a second one. We have a GIS specialist, and who am I forgetting here? I'm forgetting one of our specialists, I think. Oh, me. It's probably the other service, the town side of things, which this position was just added a year ago. So this is a relatively new arm of Beginning with Habitat. Now, the reason for Beginning with Habitat and also my position existing is because we have over 400, almost 500 organized towns in the state that are basically allowed to make land use decisions on their own. I mean, of course, there's guidance that is involved in this, but when you have 492 separate entities making their own land use decisions, that means that somebody who makes a decision in one town may not be doing something that would be in harmony with the town next to them, or be doing something that would be in concordance with what we want to see in the state. So we're trying to provide like a compass, I guess, to help guide landowners, municipalities, and other folks who are managing lands around the state. And this is especially useful and important given that a lot of these land use decisions don't elevate to the point of state review. And a lot of these decisions are being made by folks who are volunteers and may not have been doing this for their entire lives, or may have different backgrounds. And we just want to provide that opportunity for guidance and that sort of quote unquote North Star. Now, all of our products are available online, so if at any point you want to see what a property may have on it for known resources, that interactive map viewer in the top left is probably the most useful thing for you. It's just like Google Earth or Google Maps. You scroll around, you can flick on different layers, you can see what's around for threatened and endangered species or significant wildlife habitats. Of course, we don't know where everything in the state is. That requires some survey to be done, but it's probably the most comprehensive set of data that you can access. The stream viewer in the top right is great if you want to see what your town's culverts are like. So people have gone out and surveyed culverts all over the state of Maine and provided information about how aquatic organisms could pass through them, or if they can. So if you want to know how aquatic organism passage is in your town, that would be a great resource for you. And at some point, that will be blended into that interactive map viewer there in the top left. The online map database in the bottom left is where you'll find sets of quote unquote print maps available for download or for print based on towns. So if you want to get a set of Harpswell maps, they will be there. They're all organized alphabetically by town. And there's 3 sets of maps in there. So there's aquatic habitat maps, high-value plant and animal habitat maps, and then the habitat connectivity maps. We used to have something like 7 or 8 different maps, but we've boiled it down to just 3 now. And I don't know if you have access to GIS here, but if you do and want to poke around with data even more, you can request GIS data from us and we'll send it right to you. So that's the lowdown on Beginning with Habitat. Now we're going to talk about wetlands, specifically focusing on the woody wetland types later in the presentation. But starting with a really elementary part of wetlands, and I apologize that this is probably a little small to read. It's always hard to know how small a screen is going to be before a presentation. But the reason I want to start at this level, even though we all can probably imagine what a wetland is and we know to some degree what a wetland is, the reason for doing this is because there's a handful of definitions out there, and everybody defines them differently. So from the general, most basic ecological definition, a wetland is where water and land meet. Yeehaw, sparks fly. Like who saw that one coming? But with Maine DEP, which is the agency that is most responsible for regulating wetlands in the state, their definition, and this is paraphrasing a little bit, it's condensing their definition down, is areas of standing water that support or could support aquatic or semi-aquatic vegetation. They cannot be a part of a great pond, river, stream, or brook. Now, if that raises any red flags for you, like, wait, why can it not be part of a great pond, river, stream, or brook? It's because that already lands in state minimum shoreline zoning. And they're trying to prevent overlap between laws that already exist. So based on this, I would say that shoreline zoning probably came first, and then the Maine DEP wetland definition came in. So that's why that exists. And there's going to be a few other things related to legality that'll pop up like that, where it's like, oh, okay, that's why that is structured that way. So if we were to look at these different wetland types going along the bottom here, so starting on the left, that being a very typical marsh, ecologically speaking, that would be a wetland, and DEP's definition would also be a wetland. Now, a river, ecologically, yeah, it'd be a wetland, but Maine DEP, no, it would not be a wetland because, again, it cannot be a part of a river or stream directly. Now, an unvegetated quarry lake, especially a very temporary one where there's no ability to support aquatic plant life ecologically, it could still be a wetland. It probably supports some sort of microorganism, but DEP would say this is not a wetland. So Maine wetland regulations are tiered, and it gets a little confusing. We got at this a little bit in the previous slide, but one thing, oh, sorry, that should not say 10 acres. That should say half acre in size. So wetlands are automatically regulated if they're larger than a half acre in size. So what does that mean for the smaller wetlands, the things that are smaller than a half acre? That's when we get into something called the Wetlands of Special Significance, or WAS. And it's not going to cover every wetland that's smaller than a half acre, but it will cover those that are within 250 feet of lakes or ponds. So here we go, like we're getting into that tiered approach a little bit. Wetlands that are within 25 feet of rivers and streams. And why would we regulate wetlands that are close to ponds and lakes and streams? What's the point of that?
Take care of our, the land-loving little critters, which I can't think of the word for.
So there's the wildlife aspect of it too, but there's also a more general ecological idea as well. I mean, if you put
In the watershed.
Yes, exactly, right. Because what impacts that smaller wetland that might be 250 feet away from a lake could leak into that lake. So this is like a very general like ecotoxicology or watershed concept. Same with wetlands that are within 250 feet of coastal wetlands, wetlands that have an imperiled natural community. So I don't know if everyone's here is familiar with the Maine Natural Areas Program, but they have this list of natural communities where some of them are considered rare. So certain types of swamps, certain types of forests, some of those can be rare. So if that is in a wetland, it becomes a WAS. Or it could be a wetland that has a significant wildlife habitat, like inland waterfowl and wading bird habitat. If it has more than 20,000 square feet of emergent aquatic vegetation, or if it has peatlands, or if it has floodplain wetlands. All of those things could qualify a wetland for WAS. So a lot of wetlands would meet WAS requirements, as you might imagine, but still some might not be considered WAS and may not be regulated in the same way. So not all will be regulated, but many are. All right, now this is my favorite part of the presentation. Who cares? Why do we care about wetlands? I love answering the question about who cares for any sort of environmental question. Maybe one day we can get on that subject for frogs and turtles or something of that sort, but why are wetlands important? There's a handful of different reasons. Probably the most important, and I wrote this slide when we were still waiting for rain a couple days ago, but if we were in a drought, wetlands are a fantastic thing to have on your side because they essentially act like water tanks and sponges that can hold water for extended periods of time. And it's not just because they're holding water there, it's also because the soil, being wet, is capable of actually holding more water than dry soil. And then peatland and vegetation and all that can soak up extra water and maintain that and then slowly leach it into the environment. So even if rain hasn't occurred for weeks like it did just until the past couple of days, you can still maintain some level of local hydration around a wetland because of its ability to retain water even during times of drought. Now, what about floods? Again, moist soil is capable of holding more water than dry soil. So when you have like really dry soil, that water is going to run right over the top of the water, and that's why you get things like flash floods in the Southwest. And again, peat, moss, and vegetation, they can soak up water. So as water is moving downhill to rivers or lakes, it actually gets slowed down and trapped by wetlands, where it will not only slow the momentum of that water, but actually soak it up. And basically, it just buys time for the things that are at the bottom of the watershed, like rivers that can really fill up and flood relatively quickly. Oh shoot, I just lost my train of thought there. Buys time. Oh, and allows the rivers and lakes to basically breathe for a second, release that water before they get much higher. So it's a really important thing to have for flood resistance. So water comes down the hill, hits the wetland, kind of tumbles around in here for a little while. Wetland might even grow because it's absorbing all that water, releases it more slowly into the environment. You get a lighter flood load. Now, what if your wells are drying up? This is a similar concept to droughts. Again, wetlands provide a consistent source of water, and of course, every wetland has its limit. It's not going to be able to hold water forever, but I would imagine most people in Harpswell are probably on wells. Yeah?
Oh, yeah.
All right. I can't imagine there's city sewer running through much of Harpswell.
No. Neither.
Yeah. So having a wetland nearby means that you're less likely to run out of water at some point, or you might need not need to skimp on water so much if you're in the middle of a drought. And this is a big deal if we're talking about things like aquifers, where aquifers are drying up in western U.S. States, where you're starting to get quote-unquote water wars. Hopefully it never comes to that case out here. We're a little bit wetter and a little bit more lush, but certainly an excellent thing to have on your side. Now, water cleanliness is also affected by wetlands as well, and I'm not saying that you could get water so clean from a wetland that you can go drink from it and be okay. Pretty much all fresh water in Maine, and I believe in the northern U.S., has Giardia in it, so please don't take this as an excuse to go drink water out of a wetland. But theoretically, water that is rushing down a slope into this wetland is going to be relatively dirty, carrying dirt or leaves, vegetative matter, whatever. But in a wetland, it is allowed to settle down, and then that water is going to filter out into the soil or continue moving down the watershed and be theoretically a little bit more filtered out than when it initially came in. So again, don't go drinking water purely from a wetland, but theoretically it should clean water at least a little bit for us. One of the more cool things that wetlands do, and something that's getting a lot more attention, is how wetlands are capable of protecting structures and shorelines. They break energy from wave action, and this is tying into the idea of living shorelines, which is a practice that's being encouraged more by DEP nowadays, rather than using things like riprap to protect your shores. You could plant wetland vegetation that will actually break that wave action, and if you've got a house that's like right next to water and you need to protect that, there are some living shorelines practices that are pretty effective at protecting structures. So they're becoming more common. I believe DEP is planning on publishing a manual called Our Shore, where it should have suggestions on different living shoreline practices that I actually helped write when I was an intern with DEP, so hopefully you'll like it. Now, the thing that ties the most in with wildlife is how wetlands are biodiversity hotspots. Anytime you have two habitat types, especially two very different habitat types, meeting in a certain place, you create a place where you can access a variety of different resources in a small space, and that means a lot of wildlife is going to hang out there. So it should be no surprise that wetlands are some of the most biodiverse locations in the state. Of course, you're going to have aquatic species, you're going to have semi-aquatic species, and then almost all terrestrial species need to access water at some point in their lives. I forget what the statistic is in Maine. It's something like 80+% of our species need to be hanging out near permanent bodies of water so they can at least drink. Some of them need to breed in them. Some of them just need to sit in those bodies of water, like frogs. They just absorb it into their body, and they need that to function. But also really important is that wetlands frequently form travel corridors for wildlife. So this makes a lot of sense for things like fish, right? Because fish, there's a lot of migratory species out there, but even things like brook trout, they need to move between different wetlands, especially if one area is drying up and they need to get to deeper water or find better spawning habitat. But even our terrestrial wildlife will use wetlands as travel corridors as well. And I don't mean that they're going to be like walking through the middle of these wetlands, but if you think about yourself, if you were traveling through a wooded landscape and you came up to a big lake or pond of some sort, you don't want to go through it. You want to go around it probably, and most wildlife are the same. And we see a lot of our data reflecting this, where wildlife will follow shorelines around the edges of lakes, ponds, rivers. And that's why a lot of towns actually focus on conserving shorelines as a quick and easy proxy for protecting the most wildlife with the least land possible. So in Maine, we have a handful of different freshwater wetland types, and this is the broadest set of definitions that is available. This is the Maine DEP set of wetlands, but I mentioned the Maine Natural Areas Program earlier. They have dozens of different types of wetland definitions, so if you want to dig into different types, there are more out there. But in the broadest sense, we have marshes, wet meadows, peatlands, shrub swamps, forested floodplain wetlands, aquatic bed wetlands, and vernal pools. And those underlined ones are the ones that I'm going to talk about today because they're all associated with woody wetlands and they all have some things in common. And by the way, how's my speed going? Does anybody need me to go back and catch up on notes or anything like that?
I think we're set.
All right, excellent. So before we dive into the habitat types a little bit more, I just wanted to show this. It's called the NWI map, the National Wetland Inventory, which is produced by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. And this is a map that's not going to be perfect, but it definitely helps give an idea of how wet or not wet an area is. And you can see that there's a little bit of a difference in Harpswell between different areas for how wet they are. So you can see that whatever that large peninsula is there, kind of in the middle, has quite a few wetlands, whereas as you get closer to Brunswick there, it kind of dries up.
Right.
So there's a good degree of variation in what wetlands are available, but almost all of them here are considered woody wetlands. Again, there are different definitions depending on who you're talking about. So U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service doesn't have a whole lot of wetland definition types, so they just have woody wetlands as like a big broad category. They don't break it up much farther than that. They've got emergent, they've got ponds, and then like one or two others, including one or two coastal. So these four wetland types, vernal pools, shrub swamps, forested swamps, and floodplains, all have some things in common. First of all, they're almost always woody vegetation dominated. And I say almost always because sometimes vernal pools are not dominated by woody vegetation, but I would say like 90% of the time they are. They're almost always seasonal, so they usually fill with water in spring or winter, and they're dry by the end of summer. Not always, and so it depends on what wetland we're talking about, but there's usually that seasonal flow of water. And of course, they provide important habitat, and I'll dig into this a little bit more about what species might use these habitats. But this is habitat that is also becoming less common. Wetlands are one of the fastest disappearing forms of habitat that we have in the United States. So they're considered almost, they're not like an endangered habitat, but it's something that we put a lot of focus in. So starting with shrub swamps, these are areas that tend to have what feels like a really crowded swamp where you have a lot of short shrubs. And by the way, a shrub usually is about a 20-foot or less piece of woody vegetation, so it could even include some trees that may eventually grow above 20 feet. But most typically, this is where you might find things like speckled alder, holly, highbush blueberry, handful of other shrubby swamp species. But these are excellent habitats for songbirds as well as woodcock. Do you guys ever see or hear woodcock here in Harpswell? One of my favorite birds on the planet, just such a goofy little bird. They love this habitat. Amphibians and beaver, everyone's favorite, beaver. And speaking of beaver, you can see in the bottom right of that corner, there's a big cage right there. This is taken on a roadside. There's a culvert right there, so there's a huge cage going around that culvert to make sure beavers aren't gonna do anything about it.
Just a question.
Yeah.
Sometimes we, like here in town, we have a shrub scrub. Is that the same as a
Yep.
shrub?
Yeah.
Why use scrub? Why that future term?
So scrub shows up in almost every circumstance where shrub shows up. And it's really annoying. They mean the same thing. So it's like saying shrub, swamp.
We have one right on this property, right behind us.
Yeah, okay. So I don't know what the value is of adding scrub.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
Maybe there is one. Maybe someone in DEP would be like shaking their fist at me right now, but I've never experienced anything that would indicate that scrub means anything different. And by the way, this is working with DEP's like shrub, scrub, swamp definition. So this is the same thing that they're working with. But again, I think it means the same thing as far as I know. Forested swamps. These are pretty neat spots. And they tend to be one of my favorite places in the woods because depending on the time of year you go, you might not actually know you're in a swamp, or they just tend to have like this like ancient feel to them sometimes, especially if you're in a cedar swamp. Because you have these like cool cedar trees all around you and like really rolling, like rooty, rocky, and mossy topography. It's really a neat place. So these tend to be mature forests that are at least partially inundated, and again, tend to be a seasonal element to this. Again, tend to have either cedars or hemlocks or ashes, and these are really important habitats for deer. And does anybody know why that would be? Anybody a deer hunter here? So deer require areas that are sheltered from snow in the winter. If the snow is too deep, they're not capable of moving very easily. They're also not capable of finding forage that's buried 4 feet under snow. But in a place like a cedar swamp, that tends to be an area where they can access water relatively year-round. Cedar is an excellent food for deer. They love, if you have a cedar tree in your property, you might notice that the branches suddenly disappear to about this high in the winter. It's because deer are getting after that like crazy. So being in a place like this that's covered by cedar trees or hemlock, there tends to be much less snow that reaches the ground. So snowpack is lighter, access to food is greater, access to water is greater, protection from elements is greater in these areas as well. So you tend to find high concentrations of deer in these areas, and that's where you would find something called a deer wintering area, which is a significant habitat type.
Greg?
Yes.
When I look at the map, or some of the older maps, that would be called a deer yard?
Yep.
And they're designated on the map?
Yep. And another important thing to clarify for deer wintering areas or deer yards is that a lot of them have been remapped in the past couple of years.
Okay.
And with that remapping, a lot of them in southern Maine have been removed just because our winters are no longer severe enough to warrant considering a place a critical habitat for deer at this point. Turtles, by the way, some species of turtles like spotted turtle, blanding turtle, and wood turtle, both or all three being state-listed species, tend to like areas like forested swamps. Of course, amphibians as well, and they tend to be great places to find rare plants like orchids.
And that includes, what is it, pink and gold?
Lady slippers?
Lady slippers. Does that include lady slippers?
Yes, yep. So in my experience, lady slippers are most frequently found on banks of streams or in areas immediately adjacent to forested swamps. Forested floodplain wetlands. This is probably the most important wetland habitat type when we're talking about people. Reason being, I'm sure at least a couple of us here have some familiarity with floodplains and why they're important, but a floodplain being, this really flat space of land right over the high water mark of a river or a lake. And basically it spreads out floodwaters really far and wide and dissipates that flood really quickly. So really important for protecting people and structures, and this is why you have to have special considerations if you're building in a floodplain, and many towns have floodplain ordinances, but really important for people, but of course also very important for wildlife. This photo I took of a floodplain that you can actually see from the road in Unity. I don't know if you guys ever travel up to Unity, but maybe next time you're up at Common Ground Fair coming up next month or something, take a drive down Prairie Road, and you'll see this beautiful silver maple floodplain swamp, and in the winter, you would not believe how many ducks are in there. It does not freeze up all the way. It is a great place to be a duck where it's sheltered from the wind. You access food all winter long. Of course, plenty of access to food and supplies if you're a beaver. Turtles go crazy in places like this as well. Just really interesting habitat type. And then if you see it in the dry season, it's almost eerie, like when you go into a floodplain forest, because it's like really empty, floor. There's not a lot of leaves, not a lot of shrubs, but like really tall trees around you. And sometimes it feels like you're in the Pacific Northwest, like really big trees with like ferns all over in front of you. It's a really neat spot. Now, vernal pools, my favorite habitat type to mess around with, but also certainly one of the most contentious types of wetlands in the state of Maine. These are really difficult to detect. You cannot easily find a vernal pool from satellite imagery or other remote sensing. You typically need an on-the-ground survey to determine a vernal pool. So what a vernal pool is, it's a small temporary body of water that may be found within the previous types of wetlands. Basically, again, they fill up with water in springtime and they dry out by the end of summer, and that makes them naturally fishless. And that makes them great nursery habitat for things like spotted salamanders, wood frogs, and blue spotted salamanders, which have adapted their entire life history around vernal pools. They're some of the only amphibians that can lay their eggs in a body of water that dries up so rapidly. In fact, the faster that pool dries up, the faster those amphibians will produce growth hormones and develop. They're one of the only animals that can handle such a temporary body of water. And by the way, another very cool animal in that vernal pool would be the fairy shrimp. And you'll see a picture of them on the next screen. But did anybody have sea monkeys growing up? Mm-hmm. Okay, so sea monkeys are fairy shrimp. And the reason why sea monkeys were popular back then is because you could actually mail them as eggs. They can survive almost any condition when they're in their little egg. And they can actually survive for hundreds of years as an egg. So if you find a vernal pool that has fairy shrimp in it, it could very well be that those fairy shrimp were laid as eggs before European settlers even made it to the continent, which is a really amazing life strategy because suddenly you have your ancient ancestors' genes popping up in a pool, and then you have the new guys that were just laid last year, and just results in this like crazy biological cacophony going on. Yes?
So if you have wood frogs, to say if you hear wood frogs in the spring, does that mean by definition that that body of water is a vernal pool?
No.
Okay.
So wood frogs can breed in almost any wetland habitat type. But if you have a body of water that doesn't have like permanent aquatic vegetation, like if it doesn't have cattails, if it definitely is temporary, if it's not man-made, and if it has at least 40 wood frog egg masses, that could qualify as a significant vernal pool, which we'll get into in just a second. And also, despite being basically large puddles, these are really important habitats for not only the amphibians and the fairy shrimp, but other species as well, like turtles, deer, bear, owls. This is one of the best places to see an owl hunting is a vernal pool in the spring. And owls at this time of year in springtime are starving, so folks might assume, all year long they're just, snacking on rodents and whatnot. But if you were to actually look into the stomach and the crop of an owl in springtime, it is almost always loaded with salamanders and frogs. It's a really neat phenomenon. Same with bears. They're just waking up from hibernation. They just burned a ton of body fat and they need something really quick. The chicken nuggets of the forest are in these things. So they're going through these and sucking up as many of these as they can. And even turtles, 80% of their annual caloric intake comes from vernal pools. They go in there, they eat tadpoles and eggs, and that's 80% of their calories for the year comes from them just visiting those pools for just a few days. Yeah, don't get me started on vernal pools, guys. So now the trick here with vernal pools is that a lot of them don't have aquatic vegetation. And remember, this is a requirement for DEP to consider something a wetland. And another important concept here is that DEP will only start regulating impacts to wetlands if the impact is going to impact more than 4,300 square feet of a wetland. A lot of vernal pools are smaller than 4,300 square feet. So between those two things, vernal pools kind of get left in the dust. And that's why we have what's called the Significant Vernal Pool Program. That's plugging up that hole because this is, again, a biodiversity hotspot with a lot of important aspects to it. So in Maine, we have this program. Not many other states have a comparable program, but you can get a pool surveyed, and if it meets certain requirements, it can be considered significant. But not every pool is considered significant, and not every pool will be regulated. So for a pool to be considered significant, it either has to have 40 wood frog egg masses, or 20 spotted salamander egg masses, or 10 blue spotted salamander egg masses, or fairy shrimp, or any presence of a rare, threatened, or endangered species. And if you're wondering how many pools actually become significant, it's only about a fifth. About 20% of all surveyed vernal pools are considered significant. And this is really, I think, placing emphasis on surveying these pools because I don't know how many of you have done a vernal pool survey before, but they really change year to year. One year you might go and it might be booming and you might easily meet thresholds for significance, but the next year you might go and it may not reach significance at all. So that's why I think it's important to survey your lands before a development project comes in so you actually know what you have. Fairy shrimp will not show up every year in a vernal pool. And then they will also have these bloom years where they're just everywhere. So it's really important to have multi-year consistency, which is not required by the state. But if you really want to know what you're regulating and what you're handling, having multi-year surveys is something that's probably really important for vernal pools. Yes?
Just a question. The town land behind the town office had a natural resource survey done 15 years ago.
Okay.
At that point, I think they measured at least 3 to 5 significant vernal pools, which we have the paperwork and everything for. But I heard recently that you need to then register them with the state.
Yes.
So you sort of have to make sure they still qualify beforehand.
Yeah.
And I'd be interesting at another time to learn what the process is for that.
Yep. And I can give you like a quick and easy answer for that. You can either get somebody from DEP to survey, which might be really difficult, or a consultant can do that survey for you.
Okay, great.
Or folks like myself sometimes like to do it pro bono just because it's so fun to go explore vernal pools. So.
And then it'd have to be done in the spring, I would assume.
Yep. So there's required survey windows, and there's a few other requirements related to hydrology, like it has to last a certain period amount of time. So you might have something that looks totally good, but if it dries up too soon, it is not considered a significant vernal pool. But that window is actually just legally changed because of climate change.
Right, thank you.
Yep. Any other questions about vernal pools or the wetland habitat types before I dive into some more ecology about these pools or wetlands?
Yeah, I had a question about forested wetland.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a timber harvest and cattails come up,
Mm-hmm.
is that an indication that that was a forested wetland?
Great question.
Repeat his question.
Yes.
Sorry.
So the question was, if you do a timber harvest in a wetland area and then cattails spring up after that harvest, is that an indication that that was a forested wetland? I mean, my guess would be yes. I mean, that clearly indicates that you're dealing with saturated soils. It won't maintain cattails, but it would probably hang out in that way for, 15, 20 years until it gets too shady for cattails. Okay. So some more information about the ecology of forested wetlands. Again, a lot of them tend to be fishless, which means that you have a really unique ecosystem where top predators are no longer fish. They can be other things. They can be insects. They can be baby salamanders. They can be, any number of different critters. And if you look in these wetlands at the right time, you can also see what might remind you of coral reefs where, little schools of invertebrates are swimming by, and then, here's the big predator baby spotted salamander coming in and sucking up a couple mosquito larvae and whatever. So you also get these baby factories that are producing amphibians and invertebrates, which means that we have huge energy and nutrient production for the surrounding environment. So for example, 14% of our annual nitrogen deposition in our forests comes from wood frogs alone. Yes, a lot, right? And nitrogen is one of those essential elements for plant growth. If you like forests in Maine, you like wood frogs. They're helping these forests grow. And I like to think of these seasonal wetlands as like a breathing cycle where they inhale water in the springtime and then towards the end of summer they're exhaling energy and nutrients, which can go far and wide. I mean, a wood frog can travel miles away from these pools or wetlands from where they were born. And they're bringing that to areas that may have never been close enough to even see or smell these wetlands. So they have a really profound impact on the ecology of the surrounding landscape. These are also, as I mentioned earlier, one of the first places that you can find easy protein after the winter for predators. So again, bears and owls, they're big proponents of this, and then omnivores like turtles. And then also some of the earliest herbaceous plant matter grows in seasonal wetlands. So thinking of things like skunk cabbage and other wetland plants. For critters like deer and moose, that's probably pretty welcome after a long, cold winter. So these last few slides, just a few ways that you can get involved with forested wetlands as a conservation commission. Again, I think the most key thing is just surveying lands prior to land use decisions. I mean, there will be surveys that are done in response to those decisions, but having that done preemptively rather than reactionary will give you time, it will give you a better understanding of your area. And again, things like vernal pools will not show up on maps, so it really requires being boots on the ground and doing these surveys. There are a handful of ways that wetlands are considered in towns beyond state requirements. So, of course, we have our state minimum shoreline zoning requirements. Some towns go beyond that, so they might extend what the buffer is around those habitats. They might have a setback requirement. They might include certain types of wetlands. So I was saying earlier that Augusta actually has vernal pools being considered as part of their shoreline zoning. Which will not work for every town, but it might work for some. Other wetland habitat types like forested shrub or forested floodplain, those are other types that you could consider adding like an extra buffer to. But another thing that I like to emphasize is open space planning because I believe Harpswell has an open space plan.
Yes.
Yeah? All right, awesome. Thank you guys so much for having that done because that's something that a lot of towns are just catching on to now. But having that inventory of what important habitat types exist and what do we want to do with them, that is such a good thing to have done. So well done, Harpswell. Another important consideration is keeping wetland complexes as connected as possible because you get a lot of interchange between those complexes, not only between water, but of course wildlife. So water needs to flow from A to B, and sometimes if you interrupt that flow with a road or a structure, that can change how the habitat functions. But critters need to bounce between wetlands as well. So thinking of things like amphibians or turtles, or even a bear just waking up from, again, its hibernation. It needs to bounce between some of these wetlands to find resources. The more connected these things are, the more efficiently these critters can survive on the landscape. Some of the ways that you can do this include improving culverts for fish passage and other aquatic organism passage. Again, going back to that map that I had talked about earlier with the mainstream habitat viewer, you can get an idea of which culverts might need improvement in order to have aquatic passage. Maintaining habitat patches through conserved lands or open space requirements. So let's say you're throwing in a subdivision. The town of Winslow has some really good model subdivision requirements where when you put a lot in, it needs to have X percent of open space, and it needs to not only be conserved, but it needs to conserve the important resources on the property, and it needs to connect them to other patches of open space. And that plugs a lot of holes related to sometimes you throw a subdivision in and like a patch of open space is conserved, but it's essentially useless. It might not conserve anything of any real value. So those are some ideas. Another more interactive one that's pretty fun is creating and distributing and maintaining wood duck nesting boxes. Wood ducks were not doing very well a few decades ago, and now they're doing much better, but you can still construct and maintain wood duck nesting boxes, which is something I used to do a couple years ago, and it's always fun to pop those open in the winter and see how they did and see what other critters might be using them. Sometimes you pop them open and a mouse jumps out at you, or you might find like a dead swallow or a bat, or folks have even found saw-whet owls in these things. It's always fun to check those out and just a great way to help maintain the wildlife in your area. And plus, other wildlife will use these as well. Again, swallows, declining group of birds, they really like these things as well.
Is that a clutch of wood duck eggs?
That is a mix. So hooded mergansers, I don't know what their strategy is with this, but if a hooded merganser pops into a box where a wood duck has already laid eggs, they'll lay like 30 eggs right on top of it and be like, all right, I'm done, and then like take off. So you'll see like there's some like kind of olive green and brown eggs in there. Those are wood duck. The white ones are hooded merganser. And then when they do that, frequently the wood duck will just abandon it too. It's like, I'm not raising 30 kids. Like, I want 10. So, yeah, frequently you see what are called dump nests where hooded mergansers will do that. And by the way, too, so of course, this is winter when I was checking these eggs, so they're no longer viable. And when they're frozen like this and they've rotted, they're actually under a lot of pressure. So if you take those eggs and you like throw them on hard ice, it sounds like a gunshot going off. It's like, pow, like they explode. But But it's a great Conservation Commission activity and something that the state would probably support, and they might even give you wood duck nest boxes to put up yourselves as well.
But those have to be on permanent wetlands, not vernal pools, right?
Well, it would be ideal for them to be on permanent wetlands, but wood ducks can nest pretty far from a permanent wetland. They probably wouldn't want you to put a box over just a vernal pool, but they will nest in cavities over vernal pools, and they are frequently found foraging and hanging out in vernal pools. So it wouldn't be totally out of the question, especially if you're within a mile of a permanent body of water, and they will march about a mile through, woodlands and whatnot to get to them. But keeping it close to water, it's more likely to be used, and it's more likely to be successful.
I was thinking of what you were saying, and I always think of, well, Deirdre will remember, because we worked on the open space plan together. Our open space plan has focus areas.
Oh, yes, yeah.
Okay. And they're basically not regulated per se, but they are suggestions for keeping the area open. I'm thinking about this, and I'd love to be able to work with you later to see how we might use the focus areas that are there already and beef them up a little bit to take care of some of the situations we're thinking about now.
Okay.
To make the wetlands in that area more robust.
Can I give you a quick homework assignment?
Sure.
Look into Brunswick's wildlife habitat overlay.
Okay. I think I have, but I'll look at it again. Perfect.
Now, the last thing I wanted to throw in as a suggestion for how to get involved with woody wetlands is through Maine Big Night. And again, this is an organization that I've been involved with and actually started 7 or 8 years ago now. So it's a little bit of a shameless plug going on here. But this is a statewide community science project where anybody can go out on roads at night and actually help salamanders and frogs cross roads, because as many of us have probably seen, there are massacres sometimes of these poor critters, and we're out there trying to make sure that those massacres are reduced and as well documented. So that's actually my daughter right there when she was 4 years old, helping a spotted salamander cross a road not far from our property. You can see we had to crisscross tie the high-vis vest around her to make sure that she was being safe. But we welcome all sorts of folks. Check out the project online, mainbignight.org, and please feel free to join us next spring. Conservation commissions have been hosting commission-organized events related to the project where they bring together anyone who's interested in participating in the town, and they go out to a select site that is known to be either high impact or just a lot of amphibians. And the more people that you get to these events, the more fun they tend to be. The town of Cumberland organizes a huge big night event where they get 100 kids or something like that, and they get police to station at either end of the road to slow traffic down, and it's a really big event every year. And we're crossing our fingers that our first wildlife crossing structures will be installed in Orono coming up in the next few years based on our data. Forest Avenue in Orono. Yeah, did you go to UMaine, or are you familiar with the area?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so Forest Avenue and Stillwater Avenue are some of our highest impact sites in the state.
Yeah, my first big night was back in the UMaine Orono woods.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you probably know Bridie.
Bridie McGreevy? Yep.
Yeah, she was on my committee.
Cool. Yeah, the woods behind UMaine Orono are just crawling with amphibians.
When you say structures, what do you mean?
Underpasses. So when you have a road, you can either build a structure going over the top of it, which costs about 10 times more than going under it. So you can design culverts that are built for terrestrial wildlife passage, and they can be small for amphibians, like about yay high by about yay wide, or they can be, massive bridge structures. So I was just in Colorado a few months ago looking at them for. Yeah, so there's overpasses, and there's even huge underpasses, and they could be for bison and elk and deer out there. And here in Maine, we just built a handful of them on the new I-395 to Route 9 connector in Brewer. It's a several-mile extension of 395, and that has wildlife crossing structures all through it. They're built there for deer, aquatic organisms, small mammals, and there's fencing, 6.5 miles of fencing on either side of the road to direct them to those crossing structures, as well as our first what are called jump outs in the state. So if an animal makes it onto the roadway, there are one-way exits to make sure that they can get off and not get back on.
How do they make them one way?
They make them tall on the side coming into the road, but short on the side going away from the road. So it looks like a small hill if you're leaving the road, but if you're coming back, it's a wall. So if you're a deer and you can't see what you're jumping to, you're not going to do it. But if you're coming from the roadway and you're like, okay, I need to get away from these scary cars, it's not a big deal for a deer to jump down. It can see where it's going. But coming to the road, it's not going to jump up. Yeah, it's pretty neat engineering stuff. I've loved getting involved with those things.
Wow.
Yeah, so I think that, that's my last slide. We're a little bit over time, but please feel free to reach out to me with any questions or concerns. And if you have any more questions now, please feel free to shoot. I hope that was informative.
Excellent.
Very informative.
Okay.
You mentioned this is a new division of beginning with wildlife. Because I wasn't aware that they did this type of thing in the past. I remember the maps,
Yeah.
and one of the problems when we did our, well, not problem, but when we did our open space plan, everything was designed for the larger main area. And you kind of figure Harpswell is really, it is an island, so everything is much smaller, but the same things happen.
Right.
So a lot of the reasoning and areas that have to be considered for regulation, we just don't apply. It don't apply to us.
Yeah.
So I think we can find other ways to do this. But be good to work with your department and yourself.
Yeah,
do
I'm
this.
happy to be of service. And I think one thing, especially lately, that Harpswell has a lot of emphasis on that, might have not been there before is the idea of adapting to changing habitats. I
Yes.
mean, the peninsula is being coastal. I mean, things are going to need to move to adapt a little bit. And
Yep.
that's a big role that Harpswell is going to need to play.
Right.
Yes.
Great.
Just following up on Mary Ann's about our steel bling, I know, Margaret, you've come across this, the mini wetlands. Is there such a designation or discussion about mini wetlands?
Mini wetlands.
Yeah,
I've never heard that one before, but I think vernal pools are probably as close as you get to mini wetlands.
yeah, but yeah, I suppose it's non-vernal pools.
Huh.
They're just small areas that maybe are little miniature alder swamps or,
Is it possible, so Maine Natural Areas Program has a habitat type called pocket swamps. Is that something that,
pocket swamps, oh.
That could be it.
okay.
We have lots of them.
Yeah, I bet you do.
I mean, we take, for example, you take one of the areas in Harpswell, like Bailey Island or Orr's Island, well, Bailey especially, you have a lot of really small, very important wetlands that fall under the amount of area.
Right.
Yet, you have it, they play a very important part to that ecosystem.
Yep.
And it would be nice to figure out some way to make those more important, especially when you have such high pressure for development.
Yep.
Yeah, for waterwise.
Yeah, for water-wise.
So it's like, with DEP and how they have their WAS program because
Yes.
they realize that, even small wetlands are important. So a Harpswell version of WAS might be what you're
Exactly.
thinking of.
You think of percentages rather than area.
Right.
In acres.
Yeah, or services offered, species present, something to that effect.
Right. Good.
You have the Big Night as a community science program. Do you guys offer other community science programs, in particular with respect to capturing precipitation to feed groundwater systems?
So IFNW does have other community science programs, none that would fit that description. I don't know if DEP would have anything along those lines. I'm not sure if DEP has any community science programs, to tell you the truth. Yeah, no?
No.
Man, that would be cool, though. That'd be really interesting. Yeah,
Is there any way we can have a copy of your slides?
absolutely. Yeah, I can email them to Mary Ann.
That would be really
Yeah,
helpful.
that'd be great.
Because a lot of information there.
Right, and we
We
are.
could use in the future, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
And that's good point, Deirdre, because we are going to have this available online for later viewing. But it's always nice to have a copy of the slides because you can
Yes.
use them to review much later on.
Yes. Yeah, I'm sure a lot of this will be out of your minds by the time you get to dinner tonight, so
Yeah,
Yeah,
it would
happy
be
to.
very helpful.
Great.
absolutely.
How often do you update your maps?
Um,
Or IFNW?
Yeah, so the town maps are not necessarily updated on a schedule, but we update them anytime a town is in comprehensive planning. So MPAP, Municipal Planning Assistance Program, will email us a list of towns that need updated maps. But we also update them by request. So I believe Harpswells are pretty old. So if you or anybody here sent a request in, we have a request form on our website and say, we would like to have updated maps for Harpswell. My colleague basically just has to run a program that says update Harpswell, and it goes to online.
And would that be in addition to if we were to go online now and look at Harpswell, would those be the updated, or is this something special that they do?
The maps that are currently online are probably around like 5 to 10 years old right now.
Okay.
So they do need to be updated. I assume that there's not necessarily like new stuff that needs to be added. There might be one or two things, but it's more so the symbology and like the appearance of the map needs to be improved.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
Early on, you showed a map of wetlands and you showed Harpswell. How is that map done? Is it all done aerially? Or how much is ground truthing? How is the data collected to be able to show where the wetlands are?
Great question. I assume that's satellite based, and I'm not sure what sort of wavelengths they're running off of, or if it's some sort of flyover LiDAR. I'm assuming it's satellite based because they're covering the entire continental United States. So I assume somebody's not flying a plane over the entire land area of the U.S. But I'm not totally sure, but I'm sure that information is online.
You also mentioned the Our Shores brochure. When will that be available?
So I'm pretty sure it's available online now. I know last fall they were going through a review process to make sure it was ready for publication. I believe it's ready now, but don't quote me on that. So if it is ready?
It's available online. I can send it to the group, and
Great.
they're still, I think, so they just launched the Shore Corps Steward Program, and I think they're like making some edits to it, but I think it's live. We use it a lot at my work.
Good, excellent, great.
Good. Does the Coast Department have any questions?
It would take too long. Our problem is a lot gets listed, and nobody says anything until the day it's sold. And then, oh my gosh, it has 10 vernal pools on it, or it's a wetland, and they'll call, and I'll say, well, is it a wet area, is it a wet land? And just like now listening, it could be just a wet area for right now, but still be very important. But I don't know what the setback should be, we don't know how it should be classified. You know, we're just, then, you know, who do we call to verify that? I don't know.
Yeah, and I think your job is complicated by the 20 different ways to define a wetland.
Because I've had, on a certain, oh, that's a vernal pool, and I said, well, I've talked to Mary Ann about it, and I believe everything that I've read, we only have 3 that have been verified. So they're not in that areas, but I'm saying it could still be a wet area. And I've walked them, and then, yeah, they're wet, but, you know, it's just the lay of the land.
Yeah.
a lot of times.
Yeah, so in that case, you're probably needing to reach out to DEP. The trouble is they've been a little short-staffed and things are very backlogged at the moment, which is a real bummer for you guys. So sometimes you're able to hire some folks who are able to do a wetland delineation and tell you what you actually have and what you need to be thinking about. But I do not envy the position that you're in with that.
And then I have to go and get it in the budget, then we did do that for one project, and I walked the whole property with that person.
Yep.
And then they could, you know, oh, that's a so-and-so plant, that's a so-and-so plant, that loves wet feet, that doesn't, so, and that was the only way that we could determine whether or not it was or wasn't in the resource protection.
Yep.
And that's very frustrating, takes time, takes money, takes a lot of coordination.
Yeah.
And people don't wanna wait that long, they wanna get going, they wanna build, they wanna do their thing, whatever it is.
So a strategy that I've seen that helps appeal to that issue, you know, when you designate certain resource areas where, you know, we protect the things in here and we give them more consideration, the things that are outside that could have expedited permitting processes that might reduce that load or reduce the amount of time it takes. So, but that requires some verification to know, like, whatever resources are here, it's okay to have like an expedited, permit or whatever it might be that you're on to. I can't think of any examples of towns that have done this off the top of my head, but I know it has been done. And I'm happy to try to dig out that resource if you think that would be useful.
Yeah, because it's important, not important, would be helpful to you. I mean, if the town were to do some type of an overlay map, then you would have something to work with.
Right.
You don't have that now. These are some things I think we can think about on the Conservation Commission of how we can start moving in another direction.
We had one lot that was just sold, and like I said, as soon as it got sold or under contract, I had every neighbor call me and said, it's wetlands. So I went there, when I went by, I took pictures of all the wetness and where it was draining, and to get an idea how much water was there. But until the person comes in and asks for a permit, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do.
So I feel like that's a really important role that Conservation Commission could be playing is filling that gap.
Right.
And in this case, it's definitely wet, but it's not shoreline zone. Because
Right.
it's not big enough, and it's forested. So, and then the codes is the middleman telling a property owner that they have to hire a wetlands scientist. And they're expensive, and they're in short supply, and
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, then, what if I have a wet area, the ocean is here, at high tide, it fills that area, but there's also a stream that comes through it and fills it full of fresh water during the day at low tide.
Yeah.
What is it really called?
I have no idea what you would do with that.
If salt water goes into it, it's resource protection.
Yeah.
But the road commissioner in this area says, that's just a freshwater pond, Well, freshwater pond's a lot different setback than resource protection, so
Yeah.
I'm lost again.
So I think rule of thumb that you can carry with you in situations like that is usually the stricter regulation applies. So if there's any chance like saltwater is coming in, just assume it's the stricter
So
reg.
far, that's what we've done.
Yeah. Man. I don't know how you guys like fit that amount of information in your heads and like you got to think about.
How you do that? That's why Margaret got out. She said, I'm out.
No, that's why we are looking at other ways, like what other things do we zone, what other things do we protect?
Yeah.
Yeah, we have the issue that we're trying to solve, and what other ways can we come at it
Right.
that would help codes? Because any ordinance we put in has to be voted on by 5,000 people or whatever in town, because we're of our type of government. So.
Yeah. And especially too, I mean, so another big aspect of our program is related to housing and land use planning. And, in this day and age where, I'm 30 years old, I have a PhD and I have a daughter and I can't find somewhere to live. So we got to be, building houses, but like, where do we build and how do we build in a way that's like quick and efficient? So that's why we're looking at this, trade-off of like, okay, let's preserve the areas that are most important and designate the areas that it would be most okay to develop and expedite the processes there. So we can solve both problems simultaneously. That is a hard bite for some people. I mean, some people want to hold on to every natural area as much as they can, which, hey, every bit of natural area has its own value, but that's been an approach that we've been trying to balance and see where it goes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Up north, it seems like it's more visible where you have this gradation between a wetland and then a forest upland.
Mm-hmm.
I think like Pushaw Lake around Bangor, it has all these fringe areas that, gradate into alder swamps and then, where do you draw the line? We don't have those big areas here, but we have it on a smaller scale.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm thinking like Dan's Pond, we have areas that are little alder wet places, like you say, Tim. But we have a hard time just defining those.
Yep. Yeah, so it sounds like there needs to be some level of definition making at the town level, like what matters and why.
Yeah.
Pocket swamps.
Pocket swamps.
Pocket swamps.
Which I believe those are, I think it's an S2, which means that it's an imperiled community. It might be an S3, which would make it less imperiled, but still rare. So check those out, Maine Natural Area Program, pocket swamps.
Will do. Okay, well, if no one has any more questions, we can wrap this up, and I really, really appreciate you coming down to talk to us today. It's been, I know, for myself, it's just put up a lot of information that we can use to kind of work at our Waterwise program, and although it's another committee, there's a housing committee in town that's trying to do something about housing. And there's the water piece and the housing issues are very closely related in this community.
Oh, I have a library of development and habitat-related strategies, so if that comes up, please feel free to reach out.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
That'd be wonderful. Again, thank
Okay.
you for coming down.
Thank you all so much.
Yeah. All right. Really quickly before, let's really quickly go over our minutes. And then I did want to make an announcement to the committee about before we do that. I'm not sure, the last time we met was in July. I'm not sure how much all the members know about the grant we're applying for under the Resiliency Committee. Is there anyone who hasn't heard about it? But anyhow, we are applying for a grant to do a water survey of the residents in the community. And we will then have a hydrologist who does work for the state now, Carol White. She is preparing a quote. We have a ballpark figure of $40,000 to $50,000. We are applying for a grant to do this survey, which will deal with learning where people's wells are, which we've been talking about. And the way we'd be doing it would be with a survey, not an online survey. Basically, we'll have a questionnaire that goes out to all the residents, or property owners in town. They would fill out the questionnaire. They would go out to their yard and look on a map, online map, and put their tag on where their well is. And basically, that will upload with the coordinates that can then be given to the state to get our wells in place. Also, the Resiliency Committee was working on putting together a resiliency booklet for sustainability. We are incorporating that into the grant as well. We figure that will cost in the neighborhood of $10,000. So we are incorporating both of these projects into the grant. It will go to the selectmen tomorrow night, which will be, go over the whole basic process. I'm not going over the grant specifically, but the general idea of the parts of the grant. The draft is here. It's online if you care to look at it. But wanted to let everybody know we're doing that. And it's going to go in on August 29th. And with Deirdre and Ken Omig and Nancy and who is the fourth person? Jay McCrate. I went on vacation and they put it together, which was so cool. They did such a great idea. And Deirdre has been the taskmaster. You just keep everybody in line and take care of all the changes and make sure that everybody gets them. So I'd be happy to send a copy of the latest draft if anybody's interested. So that's where we are on that. And keeping our fingers crossed. We are also talking to Holly over at the the Schiller Center tomorrow morning, because I'm trying to get how they might support two programs, actually. We talked about, on the Waterwise program, giving another program in person in the fall on erosion. And after being over and sitting at the Living Center at the Coastal Study Center and looking at the wonderful landscaping that they did after they did the work, which is all done in native plants, it just looked like that would be a great place to have that program. And so I'm going to talk to her tomorrow about how they can help us with that program, and also then help us with the grant and getting the information out on the Waterwise
The
survey.
The well survey.
The well survey, yes. So that's going to happen tomorrow morning, and then we'll see how that shakes out so that we can add that to the grant. Okay. Any questions? Okay.
Oh, it's not about that. It's just,
Another question.
a neighbor mentioned that the select board had a review by our state senator and rep about legislation that has been passed in the last legislature that would affect the town. Was there, do you know if there's any legislation that was conservation commission related or natural resource related?
I think it had to do with housing, perhaps, because I wish Margaret was here, she'd step up. I believe one of our legislators, which is Cheryl,
Yes, into housing.
was very involved with that, and she talked to the housing committee about it yesterday, I think, at their meeting. I'm not sure. And she might be talking to the selectmen at tomorrow night's meeting. I haven't looked at the agenda.
This is like a week ago, they had this meeting with the select
Yeah,
board.
yeah. But I believe it was on housing. Okay, so the next thing we have to do is just take care of our minutes from the last meeting. And I read them over quickly. I had just one correction, which I added, which was just Greg's title, basically. Yeah,
And there's one typo.
okay.
I think you say the word raining, maybe? There's a G, which is supposed to be something else.
I got that, a G, which is supposed to be a K.
Okay, thank you. You know where it is?
It's under old business, Harpswell, pesticide ordinance,
Ordinance.
line 3. Second word. Right before JW.
Oh, we think,
After an article, we think.
we think.
Things that
Yeah.
we think, boom, done. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, I have a motion to approve with correction.
I so move.
Okay, Nancy, Deirdre, second. All in favor? Okay.
Take them off the draft and I'll send them in.
And you going to take care of that? Thank you, Wendy. With that, is there any other information we'd like to bring up tonight? And if,
I do think it would be great when you guys have the final version of that grant that's going in, send it around to all of us, because
We will.
Yeah.
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
gonna take it to the program committee, to the land trust, so they can begin thinking about the program.
Great, because you've all
Get them
already
up
committed to
first.
doing a program for this grant, so that's great.
Some heads up early on. They probably appreciate it.
We won't hear till January, so.
Yeah,
We have a little time.
I think there should be a program about Big Night, but I have
Yeah, I wrote
I
that
have
down
no
as well.
input with the land trust.
No, that sounded good. And the Land Trust had a big night years ago, I remember. Rob Bryan was involved with it, but it was a long time ago.
I think having Harpswell do a Big Night in whatever way will open lots of people's eyes to the importance of wetlands.
Yeah, yeah,
Value.
yeah.
And kids would think it's, and lots of
Enjoy it,
lots
yeah.
of grown-ups would think it's cool too. Like
Yeah.
hearing wood ducks is like these little quack, 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 quack.
Oh, yeah.
Not wood ducks, wood frogs.
Oh.
I think that kind of awareness is really beneficial.
Yeah, he brought up some interesting things that we could start working on when you just think about as far as outreach to the community with little programs that could get people to start working more, thinking more about the wetlands before we try to regulate them more.
Thinking about the value that wetlands
Yeah,
provide
right,
to us and all the other creatures.
right. Okay, our next meeting is on,
The third.
The 3rd and
Third.
the 17th in September.
right. And we, by the way, Jamie has started a new job, and he's working in Portland now. He's not sure how soon he will be able to start working from home. He doesn't see that happening for the first few months. But we do have to start talking about the next meeting, this erosion program that we've talked about having, and if we're gonna be able to pull that off this fall. And how much he can help us with that. Okay, other than that, it's 5:30. I think we can adjourn.
Good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Mary Ann, thanks for setting that up. That was a really interesting program.
That was great.
Really interesting. I got a lot